Plants, the green frontier. These are the discussions of the podcast Horticult. Its continuing mission to talk about strange new cultivars, to seek out new flowers and plant them, to boldly garden like no one has before. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Blaine from the Horticult. On today's podcast, we had Cameron Allcott from Progressive Plants. It's a wholesale nursery up in West Jordan, just by the Kennecott Copper Mine. And we talked to Cameron about how he was raised on a nursery and childhood labor laws that may have been bent. And then a big concern that he has in landscape is the lack of diversity and the overall simplification of designs. We also go into how long it takes a plant to get to market. We talk about native plants. We talk a little bit about aquaponics. Let's get it on. I'm B. Flane.
And I am B. Rad.
And we are the Horticult. Thanks for coming along for the ride. We have a special guest with us, Cameron Allcott.
Is this water for me?
That is for you.
Is awesome.
That is all for you.
That's wonderful.
So I absolutely know nothing about you. We have never met before.
No.
All I know is you're active online. You like to talk schmack. Are a sales rep for Progressive Plants?
It's that's kind of a convoluted story.
Tell us the story.
My relationship with Progressive Plants goes way back, way back. So my parents actually started that.
Oh.
Way back in the day. We are kind of like an offshoot of another company. So way back in the late 70s and 80s, there was a company called Native Plants Incorporated. They were big, like really, really big. Probably like, getting to the point where they're going to like rival like a Monrovia or a Bailey's, Heinz, that type of thing. And then just through like a whole bunch of like crazy mismanagement, they kind of started to fall apart from the inside. So a guy named Steve Pendleton, my mother, Janet, and my stepfather, he eventually became my stepfather, Ed Simonich. The three of them kind of broke off and started what was called like Bear Canyon Enterprises. There was I ran out of Steve's house in Draper in 1985, and then NPI, they ended up going out of business, and it was a great time. So they just like my parents and Steve, they ended up taking over the property that Native Plants was on over in Sandy. They were on 9180 Wasatch Boulevard, right like a quarter mile north of Lakai, and so what ended up happening is the probably the worst violation of child labor laws that you've ever seen, and then the subsequent Stockholm syndrome. I got really bad grades when I was about 10 years old or 11 years old or something like that, and they thought that hard work would cure that, so they put me to work at 10 years old.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. So it didn't fix my grades or anything,
but you learned how to work hard.
But I learned how to look like I was working hard.
Yeah,
you learned how to.
Right.
Yeah, so I did do that. So I would sit out there and I would weed, and really there was nothing better to do than to look at the labels of the plants that I was weeding, and then make that correlation like, oh, this is a dianthus. Oh, this is nymphophia. So that's kind of how that worked.
At like 10, you're identifying
So like
plants.
10, I'm like identifying plants and trying to like understand their Latin names and whatnot. So when it came to science class in 7th grade, and we got extra credit for for figuring out all the Latin names of all of the the leaf collections type stuff that I was doing. It's like, oh, Acer platanoides, this is going to be easy. So I got A's at that point, but in that particular subject. But so I kind of worked there in the summers in between school and at first I didn't like it because, what kid really wants to work, but it panned out for me, I guess. So I ended up working on the shipping crew for a while, so I got to do like all the maintenance, and my stepdad was actually instrumental in teaching me everything that I know about growing. Some of it was good, some of it was bad. He, a lot of new techniques kind of came out that he didn't really pay attention to that I didn't get to until later. I ended up actually hurting my back pretty bad to the point where I couldn't work there anymore.
Oh, dude.
So at 20 years old, I was done. My only other option would have been to, working like in the office, but we already had like 57,000 salespeople at that point.
Yeah. Where was that location at you started?
It was in Sandy.
Sandy, okay.
Yeah.
So you were working at NPI.
No, not at NPI. I was working at that point.
Oh,
we
you
were
bought
Progressive
that. That's
Plants,
right.
Yeah.
You bought that.
So
location.
yeah,
Okay,
10 years old. It was all Progressive Plants at that point. So,
oh, got it.
So from about 10 or 11 years old, somewhere in there. It's been so long. I mean, 41 years old. I can't remember that. Then at that point, 20 years old, I was hurt my back, couldn't work anymore. And so then I had to figure something else out. So I ended up working for another NPI offshoot called Porter Lane.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Up by the old Pinea and stuff like that. I think there's a Home Depot there now. And so I worked there for about a year, and then they went out of business. And so then I picked up a job at a landscape company doing like some landscape design because I thought like, hey, I know a lot about plants. I might as well, learn how to design and do things. And
yeah, not necessarily be the installer, but you could, draw
exactly.
up the plants.
I could draw up plants, and I knew enough about plants that I felt relatively confident in talking to people about them and trying to get an idea of what they wanted to know. And so I did that for a little while, and then the .com economic crash kind of hit, and then all of a sudden everybody's disposable income went away. Oh, yeah. And I was like, you know what, F this, I'm going to computers, and we're going to do that. That seems to be absolutely like recession proof. Boy, was I wrong. So I actually ended up doing like computers and IT for about like 12 years. So that was a whole other industry that I learned. And then I think around 2010 or 2011, my mom just called me and she's like, hey, do you want to come back? The second economic recession hit.
And she had purchased the new location.
Oh, yeah. By that point, yeah, we had the land out by the copper mine. So they moved out there in like 2004.
Oh, okay.
Because we only had 20 acres over in
that.
Sandy. And it got to the point where we couldn't keep up. Like our production could not keep up with the demand. So we're like, oh man, this is crazy. And then my stepdad had some grandiose dreams of like, being like the biggest like Intermountain wholesaler. So we moved out all the way to Kennecott because they gave us like an incredible deal. Because originally we were going to go down to Santaquin because we actually had a whole bunch of land down there. I think we had about 80 acres down there. But they gave us such a good deal that we're like, all right, we'll take it. And then the recession hit, and then now we wish we were still back over on Sandy on 20 acres because we don't need the 100 anymore.
Yeah,
so,
but you have it there just in case.
Will actually probably never happen, but because there's too many things that are different now that I don't know that we'll ever see that type of economic growth ever again, especially on the horticultural side.
So as far as the plant material goes, has it shifted from decade to decade, or has it always been like the same plant material that you've been working with?
Actually, no. It's really kind of funny. Everything kind of comes and goes in waves. And being on Facebook a little bit too, and seeing what people are kind of asking about is really kind of funny because everything that people are asking for now are plants that I absolutely detest, and there's a reason why they don't exist anymore, and like commonly on the marketplace. So people are going back, like, oh, I want irises in my yard because my grandmother had some.
Oh, sure.
And I'm like, oh, great sentimentality. Like, I get that. Irises, yeah, they're absolutely beautiful. Do you not remember that your grandma was probably out there cussing those things, trying to thin them out? Oh, yeah. They were a lot of work. If you want to really put them in your yard, I mean, go ahead. What's the other one that people are asking for? Oh, catalpa trees. Those trees were like dead for like 2 decades, 3 decades. And now like this year, I'm just like, anyone know where I can find a northern catalpa or a umbrella catalpa? And I'm like, catalpa bungia? Like, does anybody still grow that? Yeah. It's weird.
With those long sword-like
like
seed pods.
Yeah, the seed pods and stuff. So, I mean, it's just kind of funny how things just kind of like, come and go. And, I've just been around long enough to see why they weren't used in the beginning, or why they kind of fell out of favor in the beginning, but nobody really understands the maintenance behind them. Yeah.
The cleanup,
the
maintenance,
cleanup, and all that stuff.
But, roses are a lot like that too. I mean, roses are beautiful, but they do well here. But man, the maintenance on those guys is pretty insane.
Yeah, I partially agree with you. I partially don't.
No.
There's a lot of roses, like hybrid teas, for instance. I mean, just those are a nightmare here.
Yeah.
But a lot of the new shrub roses and the way that they're developing them really like finite determined plant heights, and a lot of maintenance nightmares can be contained if you just time everything properly.
I mean, what about, like, for example, the disease that roses get, that black spot?
The black spot? Generally, it's very short-lived. Okay. I've only, like, we see it at the nursery. We don't even bother treating for it, quite honestly.
It comes, it goes.
It comes and goes. Okay. I mean, it's a humidity problem, mostly. But when it gets hot, it goes away. You see it for about 4 weeks in the spring. After that, it's gone.
Well, and maybe the new cultivars they're being selected, possibly selected?
Yeah, definitely some of that. I mean, like knockout roses, for instance. I mean, they were selected for that, and it's performance in the humid environment. Texas last year, and they're just like they use knockout roses like they're going out of style. I mean, they're everywhere there. I didn't see any black spot at all. Texas
cool.
is humid. We were in Galveston, and I mean that's a humid little
right
spot
down there in the Gulf
They
area.
were blooming just absolutely beautifully. I don't think they performed that well here, but I can't overcome the marketing machine that is, knockout. So.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think there's better roses out there. That's just me. So
cool. So the plant material has changed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like we've gone. And we still see this a little bit. I mean, there's like back in the 90s, everything was all about like English garden, boxwoods, and
there's still some leftovers.
There's still a lot of leftovers, and I mean, I can see the appeal of it. It's just like, but we live in a desert. I mean, come on, guys, let's conserve water. A lot of that has shifted, and predominantly what's really shifted the most, I'd say, is ornamental grasses. Like when I got out of the industry around probably 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody was using grasses.
Right.
And then after that, like Carl Forrester's hit, and bam, everyone's got I mean, you could probably make lawns out of Carl Forrester's at this point.
That's true.
I see some people doing that. So that's been kind of like the cool thing. So that's changed a little bit. People are doing a little bit more water-wise type stuff. But for the most part, it still seems like color is supreme. People want flowers more than anything. They want perennial flowers. They don't want the maintenance that goes with them, is what I've kind of seen. Probably the most concerning thing that I've seen as far as like landscapes go is the simplification and lack of biodiversity at this point. Because I think with the economic crunch, what's kind of happened is that you don't see as many designers out there at this point, and you see a lot of contractors that
are slapping in the same.
They're just slapping the same
spireas,
Callery pears. Carl Forrester grasses, Stella d'Oro daylilies, Maynite salvia.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean
the little red spiky. No, let's see, cotoneasters maybe, but the little red spiky. God, what are those things? The thorns.
Paracanthus? No. Oh, barberries.
Yeah,
the crimson
barberries.
pygmies.
Barberries.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Crimson.
yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, the crimson pygmy barberries.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see like a lot of that, and a lot of people don't even use barberries anymore because they have thorns.
Yeah.
Oh no.
The leaf catchers. I call them.
But I actually really like barberries because I think they're probably like one of the best ways to get foliage color inside of a landscape.
Yeah.
There's a lot of varieties that are out now that grow very uniformly and not very big or very aggressively. So you can like shear them kind of once, if at all. Some of them you don't even like Concord. I don't even know if you have to cut that barberry. I mean, it just kind of grows into a little ball and only gets like 2 feet by 2 feet. People are still afraid of it. Like it's going to reach out and bite them.
Yeah.
Who cares if it's got thorns? If it's 2 by 2 and you never have to touch it, who cares if it has thorns? It's it's not going to hurt you.
And that's kind of what you're seeing, I guess, is like monoculture groupings of plants and the lack of diversity, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Okay.
So, and at the UNLA show, because I kind of thought this for a long time. Like horticulture is actually like really bad for biodiversity, just the way that we select for things and try to get a lot of uniform stuff. But the guy at North Dakota State University who came down, what he was talking about the trees, like the elm trees and the pears quite a bit. I mean, he had, I think, a very valid point. I think that was actually, we were kind of talking about ash trees too, because the impending emerald ash borer.
Right.
But he had a very good point with the elms and the Dutch elm disease. I mean, people were planting elms in groves, like on in park strips, like they were going out of style. Then all of a sudden, Dutch elm disease hits and wipes out everything. So you have miles and miles and miles of these park trees that are just gone.
Yeah.
Cutting everything down and having to replace it. So what do they replace it with? Ash trees.
My hometown, my street that I grew up on, there's a picture before the war, so it was like 1940s something, or even before that. It was my grandma, and you can see all the way down Clark Street these beautiful elms, and now they're all ash.
Yeah.
It's like we couldn't duplicate.
Couldn't learn your lesson one time, after those are cut down. Okay, let's diversify here.
Right.
Yeah.
That is kind of a newer concept. I mean,
it's very new, and it's going to take some change. I mean, we just at our nursery today, we actually had seminars where we had a bunch of landscape architects that were out because we were kind of going over new varieties that we kind of selected that we're kind of excited about, that we're going to try this year, and we'd like to get people to try.